It's Tuesday, April 15th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And join me to do just that is first-time guest on the show. I think actually first time we've ever done a podcast together, which is weird because we've met IRL several times. It is The Ringer's Danny Heifetz. Danny, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, man? Thank you for having me.
Dude, I'm happy to have you here. Like I said, I think first time we've ever done a podcast together, which is weird because like I said, we've met several times in person, and I'm going to say this about you on air. All-time vibes guy. All-time good vibes guy. Like for the listeners out there, and I'm sure many of them are like, I would love nothing more. I'd crave to hang out with Danny Heifetz in real life. I mean, he is an all-time vibes guy, very much like he's doing this, point at you if you need a drink. Like he takes care of people. So if you bring even 30% of that energy to this show, I think it's going to be a banger of an episode.
Well, if you're still craving to hang out with me, clearly we have not hung out enough, because just a few more times and you're going to be sick of me, I promise. But no, dude, I meeting you in person, it's amazing because I'm not going to lie, you're really annoying because you're smart, you're kind, you're really swole. Like you've been lifting, like you're by far the swollest analyst in football media. But it's annoying that you do yoga because you're also limber. At least like most like big jack guys, like usually, you know, at least I'm like, oh, they're gonna like pull something, and you're like the most pliable guy out here. So it's actually really annoying. I keep waiting for some moment where you're actually horrible, but it hasn't come yet.
Well, I mean, clearly we have not spent enough time together. If I think you're great vibes, and if we hang out a few more times, Danny, it'll go, you're annoying, ... and not a lot of compliments.
And you're going to pull a hamstring. Regression of the mean.
I don't know about that. I stretch every morning. Stretching is critical, okay? So I can promise I will annoy you at some point, but I probably am not going to pull a hamstring. That is for sure. But we've got some serious business to get to on the show. So enough of telling each other why we like each other. Let's get into it. This is the final edition of our Teams That Shape the Draft series. And I'm very excited to get to this one because it's one I've been looking forward to. It's the teams that we just can't quite figure out. And if you all out there have a good handle on these teams, congratulations. But this is my podcast, and these are the teams that I have a tough time figuring out as we head into the 2025 NFL Draft. We're going to go by conference here. And luckily, just by happenstance, Danny, we actually got some news over the last, I would say, few days that apply to two of the teams that we're going to talk about today, including starting with the Miami Dolphins, who I guess have decided halfway through the offseason that maybe they want to blow this thing up and rebuild. They're in like mutual trade talks to potentially send away Jalen Ramsey. I think, and I said this on Football 301 yesterday, one of my spicy draft predictions is that Tyreek Hill is going to get traded on draft weekend. So, I mean, dude, I'm going to throw all these to you just with this question. What the hell is going on with the Miami Dolphins?
In real life, Dolphins, they actually don't sleep at the full time. Like Dolphins actually have half their brain asleep and half awake. Like that's actually how they sleep. So they go up to the surface. And I think the Dolphins have kind of been half asleep, half awake for like 15 years. And maybe that's a dumb joke, but I look at the Dolphins and I'm like, nothing they want to do is being accomplished. They're like this fast team that doesn't play fast anymore. And Mike McDaniel's a run game coordinator from San Francisco that can't run the ball. And you know what I mean? Like if you just look within 3 yards of the first down marker last year, like when you were first, like second and 3, third and 3, fourth and 3, whatever, or inside of that, the Dolphins were the worst rushing team in the NFL. And so on one hand, you're like, I mean, you got Devon Achane and all these guys and Mike McDaniel, they can't run the ball. And then you're looking at defense and it's like Jalen Ramsey is a captain last year. You're going to have to replace him. Javon Holland was a captain for a couple seasons. You're going to have to replace him. Calais Campbell was a captain. You're going to have to replace him. Christian Wilkins from last year, they never really replaced him. He was a captain. There's not just like players and essential pieces on defense and offense that have to be replaced. Tyreek Hill was a captain, believe it or not. He wants to get traded. There is a leadership void on this team. There's a talent void on this team. There's an age issue. Like there's a lot of things up in the air for Miami right now.
Yeah, and they've been one of these teams that have been willing to spend big on veterans. They trade for Ramsey. Obviously, they trade for Tyreek Hill. They've made some of these bigger swings. And of course, in order to do that, what goes up must come down. They haven't had a lot of draft picks. Like they don't have a lot of young homegrown talent on the team. They have a handful of guys, but they've atrophied on the offensive line. And I think just over the course of the offense in general, they do have a decent bit of draft capital this year. They have a first round pick, a second, a third, and then 2 fourths. So, and I guess if they trade Ramsey, I'm not sure what the hell they'd get back at this point. They traded I believe it was a 3rd round pick for Ramsey a few years ago. So I don't think they're getting that. They might get like a day 3 pick or something like that, even though the team that inherits him doesn't have to pay the full salary. Because, by the way, they've already paid like $4 or $5 million of his bonuses this year. So
and the money they take on is going to just affect it. So if they don't want to pay any of the money, you get like a 5th round pick, your 6th round pick back probably. And if they want to take some money, you're just going to have to pay to get the pick back. So at the end of the day, it kind of like nets out.
Yeah, to just nothing here, pretty much. So I don't know, man. Like, I also think you mentioned a lot of the things that are just lacking on this team. I just think there's a general malaise of the identity of this team because, like you said, I think you said it really well. They're a fast team that doesn't play fast, and a team that's supposed to be like a really good rushing team that was one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL last year. So I've been saying for a few years now, like pretty much every year of his tenure, like, all right, it's time for Mike McDaniel to find a counterpunch. Well, we might actually have to force him to find a counterpunch here if there is no Tyreek Hill, and obviously on the defensive side as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Miami Mike thing is so real. Like, he really went to that head coaching job looking like a ball boy. Now he looks like someone that's in a loading screen for Grand Theft Auto 5. You know what I mean? Like, he really just looks like a cartoon character. But I think counterpunch is the right word because we'll see. I think, frankly, a lot of these offensive, I mean, this is a whole thing, but a lot of these Shanahan offensive line guys, I think that they kind of like really, I mean, a lot of teams really have gotten pretty far in life, kind of skimping at offensive line in some places. And I think the Eagles kind of stampeded him, but like the Chiefs have kind of been shoestringing bubblegum at left tackle. And then they almost kind of did a 3-peat. And then I think it caught up with a lot of teams this year. And I think Miami's a good example of that. And then I didn't even mention Teron Armstead. He left tackle, which is really right tackle because Tua's a lefty, but whatever. But he's another guy. He's retiring. He was a captain on this team. So you got Patrick Paul stepping in. He's huge. We'll see if he can play. He's like 6'7", 330 or something. We'll see if he can play. But overall, I just think that they need to be able to run the ball. But I also think that there's something about Tua where, and again, it's always weird to evaluate a player after concussions and everything during the season. But like at the end of the day, teams were kind of just playing them. Before Tua got hurt, the Bills kind of laid the blueprint on Thursday Night Football where they're like, go ahead, throw it outside. We dare you. And there were issues about that. And so I think that there has to be kind of a reimagining of how they play, especially without Tyreek Hill, because it's like cool to be Miami, speed, bender, sexy. It's all cool. But like, you need to eat something at the end of this. Like, they need protein. And I think that like they're kind of like where the Rams were a year or two ago, going back to gap running. It's like there is no physical identity on this team on offense and defense too. It's like you have Chop Robinson and Zach Sealer, and I don't know who else is on this defense 2 years from now that's on this team now.
No, I mean, I've said it all the time. They're the ultimate team that needs to eat their vegetables. They're just always looking forward to dessert, but they don't get any of that, the essential, actual things that they need. I mean, so I guess the question here for the Dolphins is what is more likely? Because I think when you're talking about Tua, is there really a counterpunch available for him? I'm skeptical. We're talking about building the running game. I just don't think like Devon Achane is a great fantasy back, because he catches a lot of like little meaningless passes and things like that. And, just a little bit of a scam there, but I don't think he's the lead runner, and are they really going to spend another draft pick on a fast running back in this class? Wouldn't rule it out. But what's more likely, that they're able to pull off sort of a little revival here? Or is it more likely that we get kind of a zombie season from the Dolphins where they're still kind of trying to do the stuff that worked in the NFL really well 4 or 5 years ago, as everybody else is becoming more physical? They're emphasizing these gap runs. They're emphasizing like true drop back concepts. Danny Heifetz, which is more likely? What is the more likely outcome for the Dolphins?
I'm not going to bet against the zombie season because I have questions about this roster. We'll see what they end up doing in the draft, because part of me thinks that, honestly, I think trading back and still getting a perfectly fine guard. I think that the Dolphins could trade back from, what are they, like 13, 14 in the draft? Or sorry, the Colts are 14. If they trade back and then can still get a Kelvin Banks, they can still get even just a Donovan Jackson, someone who can contribute, add picks, I'd be pretty into it. But overall, I'm just not inspired by anything the Dolphins have done in the draft. I mean, not to mention, they lost picks for tampering with Tom Brady. Like, they've tried. It's not for want of trying. Like, Stephen Ross is an owner. Like, he's willing to spend money. He's willing to do all this stuff. But I also kind of just think they might just take Matthew Golden and just like have him run.
I know, right? Like, can't you see it?
Yeah, I can.
And that would be the ultimate. Again, they're not eating the vegetables here, because part of what I was going to say was, you look at their team needs, like it is a lot of interior defensive linemen, it's offensive line, it's both tackle and guard, which is like, hey, this is a good class for that, right? This is the interior defensive line. At least it's decent at the top. I think there's actually some pretty good depth on the second day at the offensive line spot, depending on runs. And I do think they could probably add a running back at some point. Like, great, this is the strength of the draft, but how do we really trust it? I think that'll be the key, Danny, in terms of like which outcome is more likely. That first pick at 13, which is kind of a bit of a weird no man's land in the first round of this year, in my opinion. If they do something mature, they just take the best available offensive line. Like, all right, maybe something's happening here. But yeah, if they go the freaking Matthew Golden route or something like that, then we know that no lessons have been learned.
It's funny because the Jets are the team who's, the son, 16-year-old, 18-year-old, whatever son is the one in the draft room on the phone, and he's asking about Madden ratings and picks. And yet, if you look at what the Dolphins have done and you look at the Venn diagram between what Miami has done and what like a 14-year-old boy would do, it's kind of like a circle. It's like, oh, let's get Tyreek Hill for 2 firsts. Who cares? Let's just get the fastest team ever. Let's get Achane. He's at 99 speed. Let's get Waddle. Let's get Jalen Ramsey. Who cares about linemen? Like everything that Miami's been doing is kind of just what a 14-year-old boy would do. So I don't know. Maybe McDaniel, that's who he is at heart.
Well, I mean, I think there's something there. Just last thing here. If there's no Tyreek Hill on this team, like fantasy expectations for Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane.
I want to ask you about fantasy expectations for Jalen Waddle. I got to tell you, I'm pretty close to out. He at the end of last season joined, he's not on George Pickens level, but like there's he was a top tier, bottom tier. I don't know. The body language was disgusting. And maybe that's just like when you're a really good receiver, you should be mad about a certain situation. But I was deeply unimpressed by Jalen Waddle, honestly, for like the last 18 months. And like, where are you at on Jalen Waddle in a world where Tyreek Hill's? Because I don't really want him on any of my teams anymore.
It's a great question because I actually thought that his 2023 film and his reception perception was probably the most impressive of his career. And I was like, oh man, like this is a good little turning point for him, especially because I think the crux of the issue for Waddle is that and I think this is a little like quiet. People don't really think about this, but he kind of plays the hardest role in this offense where he is a on the line of scrimmage perimeter player. Now this offense is so weird and it's so condensed that I don't know if I want to call him like a true X receiver in the way that like a George Pickens type is or something like that. But because that's the role he plays in this offense, I think his kind of production is always going to be a little bit more volatile. Because by the way, I don't really even think he fits in that position. Like I think here's the thing. If Tyreek Hill is gone, I actually think I'd like to see Jalen Waddle doing Tyreek Hill. I don't want to see him doing this kind of perimeter on the line of scrimmage. And I'm looking at Nick Westbrook-Akina, who they added. Like that can be your sacrificial X receiver. And we've got guys like Waddle and Malik Washington, who I did like in last year's draft. Like let's move around and do fun stuff with those guys. So I want to keep that like little glimmer of optimism available for Waddle. But I also see this scenario where sometimes like there's just teams that you don't want to fully cross off your draft board, but they're pretty close. And I think the 2025 Miami Dolphins, that looks like a team I kind of might want to just X out and let somebody else get invested into.
I agree. The vibes are just tough. And also to your point, it's kind of funny to think that they give up all those picks for Tyreek Hill and functionally speaking, a ton of picks for Jalen Waddle because they moved down and then they moved back up in that draft. And just to have Jalen Waddle doing something that can be done by Nick Westbrook-Akina, like what is the point of all that? And just again, there's like a weird vision overall. But if they did Waddle in the Tyreek Hill role makes sense to me. We'll see if he can actually do it.
Yeah. The worst part about all of this is that, they did all this for Tyreek Hill. They did all this for Jalen Waddle. Oh, look at Devon Achane and Jalen Wright and all these fast running backs. And their best plays last year were like designer stuff to Jonnu Smith. But that's the most frustrating part about this offense. But that's where we're at with the Dolphins. I think just peak team that I just have no idea what the hell is happening here. You mentioned the Jets. Let's stick in the AFC East. This is a little bit different in the tone here because I'm going to ask you, like, what the hell are the New York Jets? But it's a little bit more of like, what the hell are the New York Jets, Danny? Because I'm actually kind of buying a lot of what's going on there right now. How are you feeling about this team under a new regime here?
Well, it's like any house you move in. You ever had bed bugs? You have to fumigate.
No,
me neither, but I was hearing about it the other day. And it's like you have to fumigate. You have to get up to 130 degrees, kill all the eggs. That's what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. They got to make sure that Aaron Rodgers he can't grow back. They got to get him out of the woodwork. But that is really what's going on. Like he infected the team. Like there's a stench on this team. And anything a new coaching staff is going to do is going to look better than what they did. I mean, the Jets just had one of the most embarrassing 18-month stretches in the history of one of the most embarrassing teams in the NFL and honestly in American sports. So anything that this group does is going to look better than that. And they're right to just cut him out, get him out of the situation. I'm intrigued by the Justin Fields thing. I'll be honest. I think it's the most classic Jets move ever. Like, there's no chance this works. And yet you're going to talk yourself into it. I like the idea. I like the concept. I'm not saying Fields is like Darnold, but I think it makes sense to take a dart on Justin Fields, just like the Bears are going to ruin Justin Fields and the Jets ruin Darnold. I think in the right place, right time, I'd be interested in Fields. I don't think this is the team. I don't mind the bet. I think $20 million is a lot for Fields. I like Aaron Glenn a lot. I like Aaron Glenn like quite a bit. Overall, though, I just looking at this draft, I just feel like I think that they really would be well served if Membu from Mizzou, the right tackle, could fall to them. I think that would be incredible because I think at the end of the day, what the Jets have done well and what Joe Douglas did well, the old GM, was like he did build the lines even as they were trying to win now. So I like at the end of the day, they could have like Olu Fashanu at left tackle. If they could add Membu at right tackle, they still have Tippmann at center. They've got Elijah Vera Tucker, like John Simpson with his awareness rating that, good old Brick Johnson didn't like, but he's a good left guard. Like I like that they could build from the line. That's cool. I have a lot of questions elsewhere, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think that the fumigation is probably the right place to start.
I think it's a great analogy. Like, yeah, you've got an infestation. You've just got to tent that thing up. You got to gas it out. Okay. Like that, just got to get everybody out of the building for a little bit, fumigate this thing. And then we come back for training camp and maybe we got some better vibes here. I feel like there's already better vibes in that building right now than there were 12 months ago. Just because you mentioned Joe Douglas, I did see like a tweet this morning. I thought this was really funny that, he was on the radio, Joe Douglas, talking about like, yeah, the Jets have really struggled to hit on picks outside of the first round. I'm like, the Jets, you like, we're all looking for the guy who did this or whatever. Like he's the hot dog. Who did this? Like Joe, you're the guy making the picks anyways. But I do think that's a good point. I think that this, weird point for him to be the one making it, but it is a good point. With just this draft, though, I think things line up pretty well for us to come out of the draft feeling, I don't want to say optimistic, but I think open to the offense in particular, because I'm glad you brought up Membu, who we've been doing Mock Draft Monday on the feed, and like that's been a very popular destination to send Membu to the New York Jets, and just one that I really, really like, because that suddenly turns what's been a weakness for this team into at least a theoretical strength. Like you've really invested a lot of first round capital. Olu Fashanu had a nice end to his rookie season. You get Membu in there, who could be kind of like a weaponized right tackle. I don't want to just easily make the comparisons to the Lions, but a lot of what they did with Penei Sewell, I think you could do some of that fun stuff with Armand Membu as well. And then in rounds 2 and 3, I mean, you do have to address the interior, but they badly need help at wide receiver and tight end. And I do think that there are going to be some really nice functional players who could potentially fit this scheme available on the second day of the draft at pass catcher.
I mean, the pass catcher thing can't be overstated. Do you know how many tight ends the Jets have under contract in 2026?
I mean, it's like Stone Smart and Jeremy Rucker, right?
For this season. Next season, literally 0. The Jets do not have a tight end under contract after this year.
Boy.
All 4 tight ends on the roster this year are in a contract year. At receiver, and assuming, I mean, they'll pick up Garrett Wilson's 5th-year option. So when they do that, the only receivers on the Jets under contract after this year are Garrett Wilson and Malachi Corley, who had 3 catches last year. And then they have a practice squatter. I honestly don't know anything. He's an undrafted free agent. I forget it. Marcus Riley, who's never played in a game. He's an undrafted free agent. That's the entire Jets pass catching core. No tight ends. Garrett Wilson, Malachi Corley. So we're always like, oh yeah, there's no one behind CeeDee Lamb. There's no one. No, there is like literally no one behind Garrett Wilson except basically a gadget receiver drafted by the old regime who might as well not be on the team basically because the team that drafted him didn't even like his role. You could argue that the Jets no team actually needs something as much as the Jets need receivers in this draft.
It's a really good point, and they're not not a destination that people think about often for a receiver. I think because probably nobody wants to send a receiver to the New York Jets.
To Justin Fields and
who's just dying to see that. I think we're all actually dying to see, Garrett Wilson just get loaded up with like a 33% target share in a run-heavy offense, which that always gets overstated in fantasy. Like, oh, he's going to have this massive target share. He's going to have a massive target share of like 400 pass attempts, maybe. So great. But, they even tried to, they said, hey, Alan Lazard, you can explore a trade. And predictably, he just kind of comes back to this team because nobody wants to trade for Allen Lazard in the contract that, you overpaid for him. So yeah, there is still, the fumigation is really not done here, honestly, Heifetz. Like there's a lot that still needs to be done, but I do think that from a fantasy standpoint, I could be pretty open to this as like a potentially value offense if they get Membu with the 7th overall pick and add like one intriguing pass catcher at some point here.
I mean, in terms of fantasy football, this is like the epitome of like, I mean, Justin Fields, I think, is like the essence of like that high upside backup quarterback you take. I mean, you don't even have to draft him. You take him when the draft's over, and you could just like see if Justin Fields ends up having like just a rushing floor, because Justin Fields actually is, I think he's like usually the 30th quarterback the first 5 weeks of the season, and then he ends up being like a top 5 quarterback from October and November on. But other than that, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, I don't want anything to do with any of this. I mean, even if they end up getting a rookie tight end, which I think the Jets, to be clear, I really think the Jets should take a tight end in this draft. I personally don't think the Jets should take a Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland early. I would much rather see them take a lineman and then day 2 attack like a Mason Taylor at LSU. I mean, there's so many tight ends in this draft. With like, Ferguson and Oregon, you could probably get in the 3rd round. Like, there's so many guys. Mitchell from Notre Dame might be a 4th round player. Like, there's so many opportunities or bites at the apple the Jets could get, but the Jets have to take a tight end. Again, they don't have one under contract after this year. So, but that's also for fantasy for this season. I don't want any of them.
All right. Heifetz has just crossed off like 2 AFC East teams. Like we're not.
But this is my resolution for fantasy this year is I think that I'm trying to approach fantasy more this year as like, it's 80% like what the numbers and logic and like watching teams tell you should do. And I'm trying to add the 20% more of who do I want to spend like 180 hours watching this season? And I think I'm trying to factor in more, who am I spending my time with? I want to spend as little time with the New York Jets as humanly possible. And I wish I had priced that more into my life last year when I was ranking Breece Hall. It's like, I don't want to watch this team. I don't want to spend time with these people. And like, that's why you bring me on, is because I give hard-hitting analysis. Like, the Jets are not fun to watch. That's why I'm here.
Well, honestly, it would have been helpful if we had talked about this more last season, because there was definitely a moment last summer, and this happens, and I actually want to explore these topics more. I have like a series planned for the summer where we explore some of these kind of like contrarian things, but there was definitely a moment last summer where I thought to myself, so we're really just all going to rank like 2 Jets players in the top 12, like over, like we're all just going to do that. And pretty much, I'm sure there was some people, because there's a bajillion content creators, and I don't want to say nobody was saying it, but there weren't a lot of people in the dissenting side of it, even though everybody had this air of skepticism about Rodgers. So I think it's good that you're bringing this up here. I have a feeling this next team is not going to be high on your list of like, let's spend a lot of time with the Indianapolis Colts. So instead of painting it, what the hell are the Indianapolis Colts, Danny Heifetz, I'm actually going to ask it to you this way. Can you give me any scenario where this season doesn't go exactly like this? Both quarterbacks start games. I don't care who starts week 1, but both quarterbacks start games. We get maybe one scammy production receiver, and everybody's fired at the end of the year. Can you give me any way that that's not exactly how the 2025 season goes for the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, I mean, it is if Anthony Richardson looks good. I mean, it's
okay, but do you believe that is actually a possible thing?
I do, because I think, to be totally honest, I think I'm trying to remember that I think we all need to be a little more humble, starting with me, about predicting quarterback anything. Sure. And anytime I get a question like that, I think about it. I want to go back in time, and I want to tell Matt Harmon on October 1st, Bryce Young, who has just been benched by Carolina and everyone universally agrees is not an NFL player. Mm-hmm. Bryce Young will outplay C.J. Stroud from this point in the season going forward. Because that's kind of what happened, is Bryce Young outplayed C.J. Stroud from October 1st. I don't think you could have found 2 people who would have believed that. And yet, that's kind of what happened. And so I think that none of this growth is linear. It's much more like a jungle gym. And I look at Anthony Richardson, I still see a guy, was he 20? He's younger than multiple quarterbacks in this draft class. Still, Anthony Richardson, yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I look at a player that, frankly, his background is growing up. It wasn't like these other guys. Even at C.J. Stroud, C.J. Stroud, it's still eventually made his way to these pro circuits and these quarterback things. Like, Richardson didn't get like this quarterback white glove treatment, getting to go to the Elite 11, these things. Like, there are certain things you learn in terms of like, quote unquote, how to do the job, professionalism, that Anthony Richardson learned the hardest of hard ways last year. And I kind of just still want to believe in this like stupidly talented guy that was at the end of the day out athleting people. And if Anthony Richardson does actually just learn the basics, because I don't think it's necessarily overhauls. I think that there's basic stuff with his footwork, and also just you need to throw with your receivers after practice more. Like, you need to do this more as a full-time job. I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be Lamar Jackson elite as an NFL player next season. I absolutely think he can get back there as fantasy. And again, I think it's on the margins. I don't think anything he has to do is necessarily that difficult. It's just like it's a reallocation of how he spends time and how much work he puts into this. But yeah, I mean, honestly, dude, if the Bryce Young thing is if Bryce Young can play and like just drive down the field and basically lead a game-winning drive versus the Eagles, where he puts it in Xavier Leggett's hands and he just drops it at the end of the game, I'm like, yeah, like if Bryce Young can lead a game-winning drive versus the Eagles from the 2-yard line, anything is possible, and I absolutely think Anthony Richardson could do it.
Yeah, that's why I think the Colts make sense for this segment here, because there's nothing that they could do in the draft where I'd be like, all right, we're good. There's no, like, okay, they take an edge rusher at 14, or God forbid they take a tight end. If they take a tight end at 14, I'm going to be so annoyed. I've said this a lot on social media. I said it on Football 301 yesterday. I don't need to be seeing any tight end with the 14th overall pick to the Colts. It's a very popular mock draft pick. Dude, they've got enough guys they can't get the football to. Like, Anthony Richardson will be fixed if we just get Colson Loveland in here. No, that's what's so tough about this Colts team, is that the things that would make it all work are ineffable in the way that you kind of laid it out there, right? Where it's like, Richardson suddenly is just more committed and he just takes that step. But I do think it's a good point to keep the door cracked open a little bit here, because you mentioned Richardson's age. He'll turn 23 in May. Cam Ward also is going to turn 23 in May.
That's the thing. I'm not giving up on this guy.
And a lot of the analysis with Cam Ward and why people think like, oh, there's still a lot of potential for him to get even better and better as he becomes a pro, is because he was like a wing T, high school quarterback. He hasn't been, as you said with Richardson, he hasn't been in the camps and all this stuff all this time. So I think a lot of this just comes down to Richardson. And if he can just take this moment and really use it to become the player, at least like 75% of the player that he could be with all of those gifts. Now, if Danny Dimes wins the starting quarterback competition, he's a starting quarterback in week 1.
It's over. It's over. So over. Literally, Daniel Dimes was brought in. I'm a Giants fan here. Dimes was brought in because he's good enough to be a legitimate threat, but he's bad enough that he's not supposed to win the job. Like, that's why he was brought in. It's just to scare him straight. And you know what? I think if Dimes does have to play, it's already over. I do think for the Colts, though, to your point, I have a mock draft. Shout out, shameless plug, NFLdraft.theringer.com. I have a mock draft there that is up, and I gave the Colts Colson Loveland, tight end of Michigan at 14. But you're right, and I know, and I actually submitted a couple days ago, and I actually changed my mind, and I'm going to tweak it for next week, because at the end of the day, this is actually a trench draft for the Colts, and I personally think all the teams taking a tight end running back very similar to me. Except I think Ashton Genty's better than like Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland. But overall, when a running back or tight end class is this deep, why would you take a running back in the first round when you can get one in the third round? Because you usually can't get offensive linemen or defensive linemen in the third round. So I look at this. The Colts need a trench draft, right? Stephen Holder at ESPN was pointing this out. But I mean, dude, the offensive line, I mean, center Ryan Kelly, you're losing guards. Like, they're really counting on like their third and fourth round picks last year. Matt Goncalves and Taylor Bortolini to be their interior line, but also the defensive line. They have Latu from UCLA, pass rusher, who's the first round pick last year, which almost hides that all the other pass rushers in the Colts are in a contract year too. Like Kwity Paye is the first rounder they took, but he's in a contract year. Samson Ebukam tore his Achilles and is in a contract year. You know what I mean? Tyquan Lewis is in a contract year. DeForest Buckner, who's an awesome defensive tackle, is 31. There are other nose tackles, Grover Stewart, who is 31. Like, the Colts very quietly, I don't think people have them listed as a defensive line team because they just took a defensive lineman, but that's really the spot the Colts should take at 14 is defensive line, and you come back and get tight end around 2 or 3.
It's a great point. And I'm surprised we don't see like defensive line. We don't see a guard or like a tackle to guard convert here for the Colts very often in mock drafts. It seems like everybody's just settled on this tight end thing because they do have a massive hole at tight end. Like, they've got nobody at that position and they haven't had anybody in a minute, other than VCU's finest Mo Alley Cox, but, and who's back on the team. But the last thing about the Colts and tight ends, Chris Ballard is like the biggest athletic testing honk on planet Earth, and we don't have any athletic testing on Loveland or Tyler Warren because they basically both are just call. no thanks to the pre-draft process. So I maybe again, I'm just wish casting on the thing I don't want to see, but hey, maybe that is a reason they won't go tight end.
That's a good point. I just realized who I'm going to put in my mock draft for the Colts at 14 next week. It's Shamar Stewart.
Damn, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Because then he could just sit behind it, and him and Latu are the guys for next year.
There we go. I like it. All right, I'm glad we got some of your work done here on the podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say, you should get going here. I'm just getting all my stuff for next week done ahead of time.
Sure. No problem. Well, I'm really curious what you're going to do with the Steelers in your mock draft. They're the last AFC team we're going to talk about here. I feel like the Steelers have come up a lot, and I mean, but we have to talk about them in a team that we just can't figure out what the hell is going on, because like truly what the hell is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers there. I can't believe this Aaron Rodgers thing is still happening. It feels almost embarrassing for the Steelers at this point. Like if he's not signed by the time the draft kicks off, can they really credibly like sign him after the draft? I mean, I just, what the hell is going on with the Steelers, Danny?
Okay. Big question. I think the Steelers, the DK Metcalf trade between Seattle and Pittsburgh, those are two midlife crisis teams. Those are two teams, Seahawks, Steelers, sick of being slightly better than average, but they're always good, never great anymore. And I think there's two different ways to approach a midlife crisis. This is what Seattle did, which was take your medicine. You know what you use in your hair? Shave your head. Like start meditating. You know, they're reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like they're like, all right, we're going to just like lean into being 40. And then the Steelers are the midlife crisis. Like DK Metcalf is like getting a Corvette. And like, you know what? We're just, you know what I mean? They're like, we're just going to lean and do something cool. That's really what they did. Even though you already have George Pickens, you're like, aren't you going to drive that? They're like, we'll do both of them. They really should trade George Pickens during the draft.
They should.
But the Steelers thing, it's funny because they're like, oh, people are like, oh, Steelers way, Steelers way. You know what's not the Steelers way is letting Aaron Rodgers just dictate your offseason. They're playing hard to get with Aaron Rodgers, and they're losing.
Who nobody else wants.
Dude, it's really, I don't want to say pathetic, but like.
It's pathetic. No, you can say it's pathetic.
There are certain things where it's worth checking yourselves. Because there's bias in all this. What would we be saying if I'm going to throw out some teams? The Jets, the Browns, the Giants are doing to themselves what the Steelers are doing with Aaron Rodgers. We would be making so much fun of like the Carolina Panthers or the Browns if they were letting themselves be treated the way where they are just catering to Rodgers and like he's not even on the team and they are bending over backward to placate this guy. I think what's going to happen is Aaron Rodgers is going to sign the day of the draft because he's been humiliated on the day of the draft twice. He was humiliated the day that the Packers took Jordan Love, and that's when he talked about how he poured a lot of tequila for himself on draft night.
Yep.
And he was humiliated the day Adam Schefter went out on the draft and reported that the Packers were like, there was a whole, that was the beginning of like,
thing.
The whole trade. There was like so much going on. I think that Rodgers is going to reclaim the draft day for himself and he's going to sign the day of the draft and he wants the whole day to be about him. That's personally my take because I think he's big Jamie Lannister energy. But I think that is my now conspiracy theory. He's going to sign the actual day of the draft.
Okay, I have two things to say. One on the Corvette analogy, which was perfect. The Steelers trading for DK Metcalf is like buying a Corvette, but you don't have a garage. Like you live in an LA apartment with no parking. It's
that meme of the car underneath the
exactly.
Shack.
Because like that's like what trading for a top receiver and paying him $30 million and then we don't. I guess Mason Rudolph threw him the football like that. You don't even have a parking spot. That you don't even have a parking spot for this.
And you're looking at, and the only house you're looking at and putting an offer on. Also, the owners don't want to sell you the house, and also the house doesn't even have a garage either. There's no driveway.
So I'm going to take your Rodgers signs on draft day. What if he just retires on draft day? Like they, like
that is incredible. That's better.
Thursday morning, news breaks. Aaron Rodgers decided, you know what? I actually don't want to do it. It's like that I could, because I do buy that the draft is like it's a thing for Rodgers. It's a signifying like little moment, like a pivotal point of his his
life. I mean, his career started by falling on draft day. He was on TV.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that was the start of the embarrassment. And every day it's probably he thinks about draft day. And now it's happened twice more later in his career. But it is gotten pathetic for the Steelers at this point. And obviously, if he retired, that would be the ultimate like super pathetic thing. Because the Giants have more self-respect than the Steelers at this point. They're like, you know what? Never mind. We're out. We'll just do do the Russ and Jameis thing, whatever. We'll keep having these visits with Shador, this, that, and the other. So let's live in a world where Rodgers does retire. Then what? Because this team actually has a lot of needs. Like, I think there are some real deal issues with this roster. They're just going to make Broderick Jones the starting left tackle, or, because Dan Moore moves on. Like, Troy Fautanu is hopefully going to come back and kick ass this year, but Jones has been a mess for the most part of his career. They don't have a starting running back. If George Pickens is traded, they don't have a wide receiver too. They have issues at cornerback up across from Joey Porter. And of course, they'd have a huge quarterback void if Rodgers is not there.
And that's what's so funny to me about, and that's why I really do believe DK Metcalf is the Corvette, because you get DK Metcalf if you think you can get Russell Wilson, because they had so much success together, and then Russell doesn't go back. I think they wanted Fields back, and they underpaid. They lowballed Justin Fields, because you should be honored to be a Steeler. Why would you want to be a Jet? And they're like, well, because they're offering you way more money, and so you're so desperate. But now it's funny to have DK Metcalf and then have to pay George Pickens, but then you don't have a quarterback, because, to your point, they need, like, the Broderick Jones thing. I don't want to say it's failed. He's a young player, but, like, it's not a reliable enough player to be your left tackle in the season. The flip side on the defense, I mean, dude, Cam Hayward's 30. He's going to be 36 entering this season. Like, the defensive line is thinning. And again, I love Cam Hayward, but, like, he's not enough. Like, they lost Larry Ogunjobi. Like, the Steelers the Ravens ran for 299 yards in the playoffs. I will say that again. The Ravens ran for 299 yards on the Steelers in the playoffs. That is your existential divisional rival. Teams don't forget stuff like that. And the other time they lost, they ran for over 200 too. So it's like you're allowing almost 600 yards. Almost 600 yards in these two playoff games. The two games. The last two the Steelers played the Ravens. You can't live that way. Like, Mike Tomlin cannot enter next season without fundamental changes to the run defense. Never mind the fact that, if we're being honest, I was at that game. I covered that game. I was in the Ravens locker room. The Ravens were, like, making fun of the Steelers game plan. Like, straight up. The Ravens were making fun of the Steelers game plan, and, like, not like to reporters, but, like, if you heard what they were saying among themselves, the Ravens were like as much as we talked about Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks having, like, this line up and we're going to just play and we're going to beat you because we're better than you style that won 10, 12 years ago with the Legion of Boom. But now it's like Gus Bradley. We make fun of, like, how do you still, like, now it's like, if you just post snap, do what you say you're going to do pre-snap, if it doesn't change the look, it's almost like you're like, if you're sorry, now I'm like rambling, but if you're an offense and every single week you're playing a team and they show you something and then the ball snapped and they show you something else, and you do that for a month, and then you play a team like the Steelers, and what you see is what you get. It's like swinging a baseball bat with a donut on it, and then all of a sudden you get to take the donut off. You're like, wait a second, there's no trickery. It's like, this is what it's going to be. That's what the Steelers defense has become. There's an ideological update Mike Tomlin needs. There's personnel updates they need to stop the run. And on top of it, they don't have a left tackle. So what'd they do? They got a $40 million receiver and no quarterback.
You don't have a second-round pick. So
you don't have a second-round pick.
You don't have a second-round pick on a team that has a lot of needs. So... man, we could have done like 20 more minutes on the Steelers.
Yeah, so I know that was like a really long ramble, but like,
no, it's a perfect way of saying where this team has been showing everybody the same stuff for about 5 years now, and I actually think it's going to look worse this year than ever before. All right, we're going to take our first break, because when we come back on the other side, we have another ultra confusing team to talk about right after this. All right, we're back. Danny, we have to talk about the New Orleans Saints. I mean, my God, bro, if you just had all that on the Pittsburgh Steelers, I can't wait to see what you have for this team. We truly could do a whole hour on just what the hell is going on with the New Orleans Saints. I actually just was a guest with the Saints Block Party podcast last night with Adam and Ryan, and had a good conversation about the Saints, so they're very fresh on the mind. This team was already the weirdest team in the league, Danny, before their starting quarterback seemingly has decided to come out with the fact that he has a shoulder injury that is going to cause him to miss potentially the start of maybe the entire season, because he does not want to play there. That has been pretty clear in the reporting after all this. What the hell is going on with the New Orleans Saints?
You know, I feel like I'm even more informed on the Saints than the Steelers because I was at between the Super Bowl and also a bachelor party. I spent like 12 days in New Orleans this year.
Yeah.
Like too many days. And I got to tell you, I think I learned a lot about the Saints at this bachelor party, because I think the Saints are the perfect distillation of New Orleans, where sometimes you lose a guy. Sometimes on a bachelor party you lose someone and you just lose them to the night.
Sure.
And then you think you're like, well, they'll have to, we've been going all day. We've been going since 10 in the morning. They'll have to tap out by 4 o'clock, 5, dinner time, 9, 10. They're taking out more money from the ATM at like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. You're like, they're going to stop. And then at one point, it's like 8 o'clock. They pulled an all-nighter. That is the Saints team. We've been saying like the cap shenanigans would stop in 2015 and 2016, 2017. Well, when Drew Brees retires, when Sean Payton leaves, they're like, no, they're just going to keep going. It's Bourbon Street. Like they're just going to keep going as long as they possibly can. I don't really understand how it's possible. They haven't run out of money, but like overall, I think that I know that's like a stupid bit, but I really do believe it, that there is a mentality of like, this party will never end. It's like, I don't know if it's the last third of a Scorsese movie where it's just kind of like, okay, like whoever inherits this now, maybe Kellen Moore taking over this team is a mistake because it's like the music's going to stop at some point. But like, this feels, I can't tell if this is just another moment where you're like, oh, how are the Saints going to wiggle out of this jam? And they do, but this does feel like an inflection point of like, are they really going to enter the season with Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener at quarterback, where it's like, I mean, that's easily the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. Or are they going to go and take Shedeur at 9?
And at this point, it feels like that's where we're headed, is that they're taking a quarterback at 9. It's kind of felt like that for a minute, by the way. And I think if I had to guess, what's happening here is that Derek Carr does not want to get Kirk Cousins. Like he doesn't want to, he's already on a big contract. He restructures, he gets his $40 million. But I think the team was still thinking about drafting a quarterback at 9. I think they were still thinking, they were even before, like with Carr still there, thinking about taking a Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, by the way. Like that's a little on my radar too. I don't know if they love either of those guys, but still, I think that's what's happening here. That is my guess at what's at play, is that Carr sees where this thing is going. He doesn't want a rookie quarterback here, whatever. He doesn't want to play for this team. That's just straight up the facts. He does not want to play for this team anymore. But they've decided, like one person has decided, Mickey Loomis decided, no, the party analogy that you gave there is we're going to keep rolling, even if the groom, in the bachelor party scenario, wants to tap out. The groom is wanted to, doesn't matter. Yeah. The best man has decided we're going to continue to roll on here. So that just makes them, again, one of the weirdest teams to project heading into the draft, because there's a chance that they just take a quarterback at 9. And I think that probably makes sense. And in that scenario, like, I don't know what you do with Derek Carr. I have no idea, but I don't know. Can you buy into anything the Saints are doing if there's a rookie quarterback? Because I think the Carr era is done. Like it's over.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck because they're gonna have to pay him that. They already paid him that $40 million. Like, but some way, somehow that's over. Rookie quarterback in the mix here. It's Shedeur. It's Dart. God forbid they take somebody at 9 and maybe they're, it's a big camp competition between Jalen Milroe and Spencer Rattler and like one bone, multiple guys here. What are we doing? I don't know. But can you get behind any of this as like an interesting plan for 2025?
Can I get behind it? Honestly, honestly, dude, the Saints, what they do with the cap, it reminds me of this Onion article or Onion headline that's like, local man outsmarts bank, pays credit card with other credit card. And it's kind of like, I feel like that to me is what's going on. So on one hand, I'm like, if they actually, taking Shedeur or a quarterback, leaving this draft with a quarterback that Kellen Moore thinks he can work with is the way out of this, because you just need someone cheap enough under contract you can get. I think, to me, I think Jackson Dart at 9 would be insane. But I think that Jackson Dart in the second round or the Saints moving back up, that to me is suddenly very realistic, because I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are picking in the 20s. I mean, I think it'd be easier to list the teams that won't, but I will say in particular, I think the Saints training up with Minnesota would make a ton of sense, because the Vikings, they don't get any heat for this. The Dallas Turner trade was horrific. The Vikings last year gave up a ton of picks to move up to get Dallas Turner, didn't play for them, and then skipped over Jared Verse and Chop Robinson, who were electric to end the season. So the Vikings could have just stayed and got one of those guys probably, or just stayed and got Dallas Turner. So now they only have 4 picks in this draft, I think, in Minnesota. That is a perfect pairing to me of the Saints. Take a player at 9, just get a lineman. Saints need everything. They'll extend Olave, but like the Saints need a receiver. They need offensive line, even if they extend Trevor Penning. They need defensive line. They need everything on that team. And then you come back up from 30, whatever they have, to 24, and then you get Jackson Dart. Or Shedeur, if he's still there. That, to me, is the path forward for New Orleans, where you're like, yeah, sure, you can win the NFC South if you pull that off.
That's a good. I hadn't considered that, but that's a good one because I've been interested in this like idea that the Browns are going to take Travis Hunter and then try to come back up for Shedeur Sanders. Todd McShay has been the one who's been putting that out there, and I do think that makes a lot of sense. You're an irrelevant team. Like, do some. This will make you relevant for sure. This will be the first like positive media headlines you get since you signed Deshaun Watson if you're the Cleveland Browns. The Saints, though. Yeah, maybe they do come back up for Dart. And I think that Minnesota pick is that this was one I was talking about yesterday too. That makes so much sense because they don't have a lot of draft capital. And I think they need young, cheap contracts at this point. Like they've the whole part of them getting off the Kirk Cousins timeline and then not sticking on the Sam Darnold timeline and going to JJ McCarthy is we need to be on the rookie quarterback path. We need a cheap starter. And the Saints are the number one team in the league right now who needs that path as well. They like that to me is actually the only sort of optimistic thing here is that Derek Carr, by doing whatever all this nonsense is with the shoulder stuff, and I mean maybe he really has. I'm not saying he doesn't have a shoulder injury, but I'm just saying something's off here. Maybe he's going to force them to eat their vegetables when they have done nothing but eat like Oreos for the last decade.
That is really the through line through a lot of these teams. It's just teams been eating a lot of candy.
Yeah, I mean, stop eating candy. Like unbelievable. I don't eat candy. I'll tell you that.
You don't eat? Well, no. I mean, that's how you're swell. What do you? I kind of want your diet. How do I get those arms?
You eat a lot. I mean, you just eat a lot of like meat again and again and again. You eat a lot of eggs. I mean, I'm broke, dude. Dude,
it's like that drill tweet where it's like, help, please rent utilities like eggs, like $3,000
grass-fed beef. Like why? People worried about their 401ks. I mean, whatever, dude. I'm worried about the egg budget. Give me a break. So yeah, that's really what it is. Just be content with a little economic insecurity because of the eggs. That's truly the secret there. And I think the damn Saints could use some pasture raised eggs. All right, like they need some serious help in the nutrition department because they've been eating too much candy. So let's move on from the damn New Orleans Saints and let's definitely move on from my diet. This team has definitely not been eating their vegetables. They've been doing a lot of flashy stuff, but I kind of like where they're at right now. So I'm asking this question about the Chicago Bears and like what's going on with the Bears and like again more of an intrigue sort of way because the reason I think I can't figure out what's up with them, Danny, is that they just feel like they've checked a lot of boxes this offseason. I don't want to say the Bears are the offseason champion for the 5th year in a row, but they've had a pretty good offseason here.
It's good. The offseason champ is the Raiders because you actually have Tom Brady involved. Pete Carroll hired Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator and Geno Smith. So I got to give that to the Raiders. But the Bears, I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic. I mean, dude, Ben Johnson as head coach is the most exciting coach hire I think a team has been rallied around in like, I mean, it's got to be like 10 years, maybe longer. I mean, I think the Bears are hard to predict for the draft because I feel like, frankly, everything they've done has been about Caleb Williams. Like Ben Johnson, the entire thing was just like, can you help us fix Caleb Williams? Everything Ben Johnson has done since then is to fix Caleb Williams. Like they shored up the interior offensive line. We have this funny thing with quarterbacks. When a quarterback's 6 feet tall, all we talk about is can they see over the offensive line? And then Caleb Williams is 6'1", doesn't come up a single time. And it didn't come up once in the draft process. Can he see 1 inch? Great point. Never comes up. And yet, dare I say, kind of funny that he has this play style that would suggest sometimes he can't see over his line. But the point is the interior offensive line is very important for quarterbacks who are like Bryce Young to Caleb Williams sized. And you see what happens when Bryce Young, when the Panthers level up the interior line. They pay way too much for guards. And guess what? Bryce Young's career is revived. You see the Bears doing that. They obviously trade for Joe Thuney from Kansas City. That was a good, smart move. They trade for Jonah Jackson from the Rams, who was a disaster, unplayable in Los Angeles, but he played very well under Ben Johnson in Detroit. They overpay for Drew Dalman from the Falcons, who's whatever. But you know what? You need what you need. So you have now 3 new interior offensive linemen. I do have a tattoo on my back that I try to remember every year that just says, don't assume that teams will upgrade their offensive line just because they got new linemen. That doesn't always translate. I don't know. That's a joke for my show.
I was going to say, are you serious that you actually have that tattoo or no?
No, it's just a dumb, that was a dumb joke. No, I feel like we always forget these lessons every year. So we joke that we do. Yeah. You ever seen the movie Memento?
No.
Oh, well,
you don't want to play has with me. Yeah.
You don't actually. The whole point is he can't remember anything, but he has amnesia, so he tattoos his to-do list on his chest of who he has to murder. But the point is, you don't want to assume that the Bears' offensive line will be better, but it probably will. So at that point, I look at the Bears, and there's like, it's literally the angel devil on your shoulder. Because the Angels, like, you should probably upgrade the defensive line. You took care of offense. You took care of receiver. You got Caleb Williams. You have the best secondary or maybe the best secondary in the NFC. Take a defensive line. Montez Sweat is like 30. Both your defensive tackles are like 31. Like, you don't have a ton of youth here. And then the Devils like, take Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, right.
Do it. It'd be cool.
Well, I mean, this comes back to eating the vegetables, right? Like they actually have eaten their vegetables. They've gotten some good quality. They had a good quality steak. Okay, the protein is high. The vegetable intake is good. We're feeling good about the fiber of the Chicago Bears right now. But like these guys, Ryan Poles and these guys are looking at that dessert menu. At the end of the meal, they're like, you guys want dessert? We want to let's take a peek. Let's take a look at it. If you're taking a look at the dessert menu, unless you're my mother, she loves to do this. So I just want to look at it. What do you want to look at it for? Just order a dessert.
Reading me. Who doesn't want to look at a dessert menu? What are you?
I don't want to look at it if I'm not going to get it. That's what I'm saying.
We can't. For your swole limber king over here, I'm like, some of us from mere mortals want to look at the dessert menu. Even at a good tiramisu, I want to read about the tiramisu. You know what? I
don't want to read about it. I want to get it. That's my point here. Is that if you are doing the let's take a look at it, you're probably going to order it. That's where I feel like the Bears are right now. Is that they're like, we'll just take a look at it, and that's what makes me think the Jeanty thing is going to happen. But at the same time, I feel like somebody's trading up for Jeanty, or he's not going to be there at 10. I actually think the choice will be taken away from them. So then it will become interesting. Like, are they a Tyler Warren team? Because I actually think Tyler Warren can do a lot of what Sam Laporta did for Ben Johnson in Detroit. And, he wouldn't have to be a traditional inline guy because Cole Kmet is that. So again, they're they're just on my radar about, are they a team that are going to continue to get the fiber intake, continue to get the protein intake, or do they get a little dessert here at 10?
To be clear, they need the fiber still. I mean, I think the vegetables they've added have been more like Trader Joe's frozen vegetables than they have been necessarily like, farm stand, like, perfect organic vegetables. I think that,
we need some non-GMO stuff in here, folks.
I think overall the nature of this draft, I think that as much as the draft is, you have to remember, even the first round, 50-50 on talent, and then within injuries, like a third of these guys get their 5th-year option extended. Like literally, if you just look at teams grading their own drafts, somewhere between a third to under half of the first-round picks, the teams actually are like, yeah, we'll add a 5th year to the contract. So the hit rate's low. However, that's on individual players. Generally speaking, the one thing the draft intelligentsia doesn't get credit for is when people say, this is a good draft for receiver, this is a bad draft for this. Generally speaking, actually, it's usually kind of right. You never know the individuals, but in net, they actually usually get it right. I think that this draft is so deep at defensive line, and the Bears have defensive line needs so desperately. Mm-hmm. I think if the Bears don't take, like, again, speaking as a Giants fan, love Saquon Barkley. Didn't help the Giants win a lot of games. Love Christian. I know you were a Panthers fan. How many games did Christian McCaffrey actually help Carolina win? Not that many. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the Lions got Jahmyr Gibbs because they had already taken the farm stand vegetables of like 8. They had all like 4 offensive linemen in the first round or something like that. Like their defensive line, they had taken Aiden Hutchinson, and I think they had used 5 or 6 like round or day 1 or day 2 picks in the last 3 years on defensive line. Like, they had so many linemen that they could do the Jahmyr Gibbs thing. I don't think the Bears have had that many vegetables that they could take a running back at this point. I think that they'll look back, and if you don't take a defensive lineman with all the defensive linemen that are going to go in the first round, I think you're really going to regret it.
Don't look at that dessert menu, Ryan. Just don't. Just don't even take a peek. Don't take a look. They've got a first round pick. They've got 2 second-round picks. So, like, there's a good chance that the Bears definitely cement themselves as the offseason champ. And yeah, they added Grady Jarrett, they added Dio Adingbo, but you can still double and triple down at the defensive line spot.
While we're here, can I be annoying? I'm trying to hold people to this. If the Giants took Ashton Jeanty at like 3, you'd be like, that's a mistake. You can't take a running back that high. If the Chiefs took Ashton Jeanty at 31, you'd be like, all right, I get it. That's sick. That's so cool. He fell to you. Where is the point in the draft where you're like, that's cool that he went there. I don't care about running back value. Like, how far down the, like, I think if the Raiders take Ashton Jeanty at 6, I think that's a mistake. So where is the point for you where you're like, that's cool, you could take him there?
Well, I'm not really like the biggest running back value hardo at this point, so I might be the wrong person to be asking this. And I also do think that within the context of this draft, at some point you're just taking significantly worse players. And again, we don't know anything, right? As you mentioned, like, we can be like directionally accurate about the strength of a class and the strength of positions, but ultimately like all of these guys are dice rolls. We have no idea. But theoretically teams will be taking much lower ranked players than they will Genty, which is why I think there's just no chance he's getting out of the top 10. I do think that for some, like, again, forget about specific teams, whatever. I think I think it's fine taking him in the top 10 in this specific draft. Now, yeah, obviously if the Patriots did it at 4, we just can't help ourselves. Like, he's our highest ranked player. I don't know about that. The Jaguars at 5. I don't know about that. And yeah, I'm a little bit with you on the Raiders thing, but if he goes like 8, 9, 10, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. The Bears thing, I think the Bears are the line for me because I don't think they should do it. In the moment the Bears take Ashton Genty, I'm like, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool, right? Yeah, exactly. All right, final Sick. NFC team here who's actually picking right after the Chicago Bears, San Francisco 49ers. They're a little bit of a weird team in this mix because, I mean, like, we know what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to shed some salary. They're trying to get themselves to the next era as they try to get this Brock Purdy extension done. But under that kind of notion here, like, what the hell are the San Francisco 49ers in 2025?
Well, they're the ghost of Christmas future for the Eagles. They got out-Eaglesed by the Eagles. This is the team that was the deepest team in the NFL. They were the rookie contract quarterback team that had the deepest D-line, and they had the play call. Like, to me, the Niners are just, they went for their window and they missed. Like, they were spending as much money as anyone. The Niners last season, the Niners are the oldest team in the NFL. Like, they went for it. And they missed. And like the whole thing was subsidized by Brock Purdy's contract. Like, the Niners paid Christian McCaffrey. They paid Brandon Ayuk. They paid George Kittle. They paid Trent Williams. They paid Nick Bosa. They paid Fred Warner. Brock Purdy paid for all that. Now they got to pay Brock Purdy. Like, Brock Purdy's contract, we don't have to get all in the economics and stuff, but like, Dak Prescott was making more in a half than Brock Purdy made all year. Like, straight up. Like Brock Purdy now is going to make the Dak Prescott contract, and now you see an exodus. The Niners lost like basically a dozen free agents, including a lot of the high-paid ones. I think 8 of the first 25 free agents that signed on day one were basically 49ers. And so this is the exodus of a team, and so they're shifting between eras, and I have a lot of thoughts on this Niners team, but overall, like, I agree with you. Like, they are a weird team to figure out because it is a shifting in identity for a team that has been a yearly Super Bowl contender, and now they have to take that step back, which I think is very hard to do for the serial psycho competitors like Kyle Shanahan.
And I think they kind of tried to take a step in a new direction last year rather quietly. I think the first signal of it was Ricky Pearsall being taken in the first round. I think a lot of that was at the time sort of viewed as, they think Ayuk's not coming back. They think Deebo Samuel maybe is a trade candidate. And I think those were on the table potentially. But
they weren't on the table. They were on the phone. Like, John Lynch was on the phone to trade Ayuk, and he came back in the building, and Shanahan and Ayuk talked for 2 hours. Ayuk convinced Ayuk to stay, and they ran upstairs and got John Lynch off the phone trading him.
Yes, that's how it unfolded. At the time of the draft, though, I think that, again, it was like this idea. But I also think that Pearsall is just so different than those two guys, right? Because he is a slot route runner who kind of creates these layup catches and things like that for the quarterback. And you saw when he was even used early on before he was, fully healthy from being freaking shot in August, like, he was used in a role that just wasn't present in the offense before that, because this team was trying to go to, like, to bring it all the way back around to the Dolphins, who we talked to the top. Like, the Dolphins are still trying to do this stuff that the Niners were doing 4 or 5 years ago. The Niners have actually moved into this kind of more gap run scheme, more just true drop back stuff. But again, they were still kind of trying to live in both worlds. Now, I think they will push towards this new era, but how successful will that be? And is there anything that they can do on draft day, Danny, when they have a first and a second round pick, 11th in both rounds, then they have 2 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and 3 sevenths. Like, they do have a lot of draft capital, which they're going to need because they're going to need cheap contracts. But is there anything they can do in this kind of draft to maybe make you more optimistic about, like, where this team could be this year and obviously into the next era, rather than they just missed their window?
Yeah, I mean, it's a trench draft for the Niners. There's a lot of teams that need a trench draft, and the Niners are right there, like the D-line in particular. The Niners were the Eagles. They had this deepest stable. They 2019 Super Bowl, both times they lost to the Chiefs. The Niners got there in large part because they had, obviously, the offense of Shanahan, but they had this defensive line, never-ending stable. And, like, you lose, I mean, I can't even name all the linemen they lost, but honestly, I think it's more interesting the linemen they're there. I mean, Nick Bosa is a defensive end. they don't have other startable defensive ends. Defensive tackle, it's Jordan Elliott and Evan Anderson. I mean, this is a team that once had like Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave, or I guess they didn't overlap, but like you had Nick Bosa. Like this has been an incredible defensive line for so long. They don't have anything. And so I think that is the spot they have to attack. They're going to try out Ben Barch at left guard. And like, never mind the fact that Trent Williams is like 35. Like, I mean, this is like the lines are not a strength of the Niners anymore.
Yeah.
And then Kyle Shanahan, like you can say whatever you want about analytics or whatever. The Niners have to stop the run and be able to run the ball. Like that is who they are. And so I think that, they added Dom Puny last year who like, that's good. But other than that, like, I think that I have real serious concerns about what San Francisco is doing on the line. So I think that they have to be able to do that.
To bring it back to food again and diets, the Niners are your friend that like has that annoyingly fast metabolism.
Yes.
Which to be fair,
you're the Niners.
No. Let's get this on the record. I was never that guy. Yeah. I was never that guy. The annoying. I had to work for this. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But as a kid, no way. I was like, oh, I have one cheeseburger. I gained 50 pounds.
So you're Howie Roseman. You got sent to the wrong side of the building. And, by Chip Kelly. You had to work your way there.
Yes, I'm very similar to Howie Roseman. Yes, for sure. I don't even know where I'm going with that, but
no, I see what you're saying.
Much more successful man. Yeah. But the point is, like, the Niners have been able to do these things where, like, they have, generally eaten a normal meal plan. They've eaten their vegetables. They've gotten like trench guys, stuff like that. But they've also done that weird, like, let's just get an ice cream sundae after every dinner, because they've done the fun stuff. They can't do that. They're old now, so unless they're going to get on some PEDs to up their metabolism, like they've got to actually get back and just eat some whole foods here.
I couldn't tell you how right that analogy is, because the perfect quote, Kyle Shanahan said this at the owners meeting a couple weeks ago, and this blew me away. And if you want the difference between the Niners as an organization and why they faltered, and the Eagles as an organization of how the Eagles had like the third, fourth youngest defense in the NFL, and that's the defense that did that to the Chiefs. The difference between the Niners and Eagles is Kyle Shanahan was like a couple of drafts ago, remember when they took Jake Moody in the third round?
Yes.
Like they took him and it was like they didn't have a first round pick. They didn't have a second round pick. They took Jake Moody in the third. Kyle Shanahan said they did a couple weeks ago. He says they did that because that was the only spot on the team they thought they could add a starter in the draft.
Yep.
And that to me is the mentality of that to me is the difference of when you have a coach ultimately making the decision versus the Eagles with Howie Roseman. Is the Eagles would never draft a kicker because the kicker could start. They would just take another defensive lineman or they would take an offensive lineman. The Eagles are drafting Jason Kelce's replacement a year before he retires. They're going to take Lane Johnson's replacement this year. Like the Niners are out here drafting kickers, and you know what? That's how you end up with the oldest team in the NFL. And so I think that this to me is the Niners realizing, we got to get the metabolism isn't going to get us through this anymore. So to your point, I love that analogy. So yeah, they got to get linemen because they should have been stacking linemen this whole time.
Well, that's how we will know if the Niners are serious, is if we see, like a trade up for Tyler Warren, we see another third round running back, we see a kicker or a punter drafted, then their long snapper move on. It's a starting spot here. So yeah, if we see any of that, we can go, and they've got the picks to move up and down the draft board to do that kind of weird stuff and eat their candy in the middle of dinner here. So that is how we'll know if the Niners are serious or not. We're going to take one last quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk through a couple of teams and we're going to actually just shoot from the hip here about, hey, what teams could do the Michael Penix and surprise us all in the first round right after this. All right, we're back. Danny, this is a little just fun. We've had a terrible time here together on this show, but it's been terrible. Let's actually have some fun here in our final segment. Who is going to be this year's Michael Penix, like the draft pick? What's going to be this year's Michael Penix? The team, maybe the player, whatever. You can do either. That is just going to shock us all in round one. Since this is the podcast about things that we can't quite and teams we can't quite figure out, I feel like this just makes sense to try to get some wacky predictions on the record here.
Should the Falcons just take another quarterback? They just take Shedeur again this year.
Well, that would would be something.
They just take Shedeur. I think the answer should be, unless the Falcons did that. It's the Giants taking a quarterback after all this over Abdul Carter would be crazy. But really, no, the answer is probably the Saints, right? It's probably the Saints taking Jackson Dart at 9. I think that's probably the answer where people would be like, wow, that's really high. Or a team that needs a quarterback that you're like, wait, I thought this settled, was the Giants taking a quarterback, I think would be like, wait, so you have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Tommy DeVito, and you have Shedeur Sanders? I think those are the two teams I look at. I'm curious. What do you think?
I feel like the Rams trading into the top 10 for Tyler Warren is, and I know that's like ultra specific, But I have a couple thoughts on this. One, it was very obvious and very clear they were hot and heavy after Brock Bowers last year. They wanted to trade up for Brock Bowers. Didn't happen. Secondly, it is on my radar that as soon as Tyler Higbee was healthy last year, man, like Sean McVay's like, I got to get Tyler Higbee the ball as much as possible. Like, forget about Cooper, which was the ultimate sign that Cooper Kupp was done in LA. And it was pretty obvious, but that really cemented it to me that they just could not help. Like, we got to get Tyler Higbee the ball. So I think they want to be more of a 12 personnel team. Getting Warren in here could be kind of like their Brock Bowers, because he's a bit of a hyper specific type of tight end where I think you do have to design some stuff for him. I actually think McVay would be pretty good at designing that. And they have 2 third-round picks, and they've never been shy about giving away future picks. They did it last year. They gave up this year's 2nd-round pick to go get Braden Fisk. So I feel like the Rams, suddenly we're all talking, we're sitting there at the 8th overall pick. Panthers flash off, Rams flash on, would be something that is on my radar here.
I think that's really smart. You know, I mean, Les Snead used to describe the 4 load-bearing pillars of the Rams as like McVay, Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and I think that you had Puka Nacua, not one for one schematically, but like Puka Nacua took the load from as the pillar from Cooper Kupp, and they actually managed somehow to replace Aaron Donald in the aggregate with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk last year. So that's kind of there. So now you have Stafford, which they kind of really, I mean, he really called their bluff, but like they do need to replace, they still need a long-term replacement quarterback with Stafford. I think a long-term replacement with Rob Havenstein at tackle. But then the one that's more now is, to your point, is Tyler Higbee. And so I think I like that one a lot. We'll see if they trade up. I think that trying to get Tyler Warren because you missed Brock Bowers is just like a classic NFL mistake you see all the time, is trying to get like last year's guy instead of this year guy. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, we'll go get last year's Christian McCaffrey, and then like you miss Deebo Samuel. Like, oh, we wanted Deebo Samuel, and so you end up like every year trying to fight the last war instead of win the next one. A year from now, everyone's going to be like, wow, if only we could find some cornerback or receiver that could play both ways. I'm like, just take Travis Hunter this year. Just do it this year. It's fine. Don't try to get Patrick. Yeah, don't try to get Patrick Surtain to play receiver next year. Just take the guy this year. It's like, look at this year's class. But you're right that they need the tight end though, like badly in that offense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just as clear like they could use just one more guy over the middle of the field, because I think Devontae Adams will be doing so much on the perimeter for them. Couple more from me, and I'm sure if you have any others, but a couple more that I have. One, Sean Payton, Denver Broncos, another team that I think is a candidate to trade into the top 10. I would say for Ashton Genty. They're another team. Like Peyton has never missed a chance to get himself some dessert and pay extra to get it. So I could see them moving up into the top 10 for Genty. I've been trying to manifest that for a minute, so this could just be pure selfishness, but I do think that they're a candidate to move up. They need a running back. I know Sean really likes Ashton Genty, so there's that. And another one is just Jalen Milroe going in the first round. I mean, he's been invited to the draft. That doesn't mean everything, but he's been invited to the friggin' draft. And there's a little bit of smoke about the Steelers and Jalen Milroe. So if our little weird scenario where Rodgers retires on the morning of the draft, I get Jalen Milroe as the 21st overall pick, I think is like within the range of outcomes, even if it is admittedly pretty wild.
You know who I think takes Milroe?
Who?
Philadelphia. In the second round.
I
think the Eagles take Milroe.
Quarterback factory.
Yeah, the quarterback factory. I think that they go and take Milroe, and it's just like everyone's like, oh, I don't know, second round, can you really? And the Eagles are like, yeah, cool, we're going to stick you behind Jalen Hurts, learn to play football. I mean, and Milroe's just there. I have, do you want to, all right, let's see here. While I'm here, should I give you, do you want another crazy take, or do you want just team pairings?
I don't care, anything you want.
Okay. So we have shameless plug for the Ringer NFL Draft Show, and we do something every year called the Take Purge, where we kind of have all these like intrusive thoughts that we feel like it's irresponsible to share, but like you want to get them out. And it's kind of like your spice thing, but it's kind of like things that are so spicy that you're like, I don't think I professionally can say this. So we suspend professionalism and we just say stuff. And I'm going to just give you one of my take purges from our episode next week. If you take quarterbacks out of the conversation, like we're just not talking quarterbacks for a second, I think Travis Hunter will be the best football player of all time.
I kind of agree with you. Like, I really do think this is and this is a stupid take because he won the freaking Heisman, and like we've all talked about Travis Hunter, but I feel like it's still under discussed, like what he has done to this point so far. He had an interview recently where he's basically said like, oh, I just won't play football anymore if like a team says that I can't play both ways, because he doesn't know any other way to do it. So I expand on this, but I'm not quite like the best football player of all time is just an insane thing to say.
It's the best football player of all time because look, I think people are so caught up in the details of what he might like, of the questions of what he might not be able to do, that people have totally lost the plot on the upside of, but what if he just can do it again? Like I was at the combine and I asked Travis Hunter, I was like, did any college coaches tell you could play both ways full time except Deion Sanders? He was like, no, nobody thought I could do it except Deion.
Yeah.
And then Travis Hunter won the Heisman.
He friggin' did it.
But the Heisman almost underrates it. He won the Bednarik Award for the best defender in college football. And he won the award for the Biletnikoff for best receiver. He was the best. He won both awards. No, Deion Sanders was no one else even thought he could play both ways. Yeah. He was the best receiver and the best defender. Now, people are saying, well, he can't do it in the NFL. Why not? And I understand it's going to be hard. Yeah. He's also just I think that people have a problem sometimes with imagination. A lot of things are happening and have happened already that I was told never could happen. I was told Dan Snyder would never sell the Washington franchise or rename the team. He renamed it twice and sold it once. I was told Wayne Gretzky's goals record would never be broken. And more than anything, I was told when I was growing up playing Little League by countless adults who I thought knew everything, you can never be an MLB pitcher and hitter. It's not possible. It's too specialized. It's not doable. The physical toll. And then I watched Shohei Ohtani trot over from Japan and lead the Major League Baseball in strikeouts per 9 innings while also doing a 50-50 homer steal season. I was told this is impossible. That's just things I saw in the last 3 years. And I'm like, I just think that frankly, the magic of Ohtani has made me realize, with due respect to everyone involved who knows more about the specifics than me.
Sure.
It is absolutely possible because I just watched Travis Hunter do it. It's not a projection. He just did it. He clearly knows his body better than everyone else. The most mind-blowing thing I heard at the whole combine, sorry, I know I'm ranting. The most mind-blowing thing was Travis Hunter was asked, isn't it going to be harder in the NFL? He said, no, it'll be easier. The breaks are way longer.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And it's like, well, the commercial breaks, they're longer. And he's like, it's not at altitude. And that's how he's thinking. He's like an Olympian athlete training in Colorado who's now going to have more breaks because of the commercial breaks. And I'm like, I don't know. I just think, I'm not saying it definitely will work, but if it does, I don't think people have actually, somehow we've had 4 months of draft process and people haven't actually steeled themselves for a world where he just could be all pro on both sides of the ball on the same all pro ticket.
I mean, the altitude thing is a really good point. I heard Jordan Rodrigue from the Athletic and was on NFL Daily with Greg Rosenthal say that he did all this stuff, played both ways at altitude, which is in Colorado, which is insane. And Coach Prime made the same point where he said that the pace of college football, because teams aren't huddling and all of that, so just forget about the commercials. The teams are huddling more in the NFL. It is a slower game. Once the ball is snapped, yeah, obviously players are bigger, faster, stronger. We know all that stuff. But in terms of just the pace of the game, it's faster in college football. You play more snaps. Trust me, I'm charting receivers that are never going to matter in the NFL for 80 snaps a freaking game. They're running 90 routes. I mean, it's unbelievable. So yeah, it's just that part of it is possible. That to me, the number one lesson in life to me is never immediately say no to things. That's going to make you wrong a lot, but just leave the door cracked. Leave that a little light of imagination on.
And how often in fan, and thank you for indulging me for my rant there, but I just feel so passionate about this because I kind of thought it would be over indexed on he's going to play both. And then smart Alex will have to be well, he probably can't. And actually mainstream is, well, I have to do this and that. I'm like, and people like Nate have talked about it, and they're right. Well, he's going to have to be in the defensive meeting rooms and we'll have to figure out the offensive contributions. Cool. That's what the coaching's for. But I also think
it's what they do, and it's what he just did, so
he just did it.
It was very similar. It's not this, it's more extreme, but it's similar to, remember when Devontae Smith came into the NFL and it was well, he can't play at that BMI. He can't succeed at that BMI. It's he would be an outlier if he thrived at that BMI. Well, yeah, he's an outlier already. because he just won the Heisman as a wide receiver, which generally never happens at that BMI. Like, he is already an outlier. He would just have to be an outlier again. And that is basically the case with Travis Hunter as well.
And that's it. And at the end of the day, it's just how often do we make fun of how many the term generational. He's a once-in-a-century player. It's like Jim Thorpe 100 years ago is the comp. And also, there's a quarterback value thing here. If he does it, it's the same as a quarterback contract, because if he's playing as a $30 million receiver and a $25 million quarterback for like $15 million, that's $40 million in savings. It's not about the quarterback rookie contract. It's about the $40 million. It doesn't matter how you get it.
Yeah, that's where Charles McDonald's point about like, hey, Travis, don't do this because they're not going to give you 2 paychecks is in the back of my mind.
It's being an icon, please. It's like there's no price in being an icon. Ohtani gave up $400 million because he was like, if he had waited till 29, he could have came over and made more money. He was like, I think I'm the best baseball player in the world. I can't like live without knowing that. And I think Hunter has that attitude.
Danny Heifetz, you are an icon. You finished this with an absolute exclamation point. I appreciate you doing this, man. This was absolutely a total blast. Tell all the people what you're working on right now, what they can check out leading to the NFL draft.
Ringer NFL Draft Show. Check us out. It's me, Danny Kelly, Craig Horlbeck, and it's really simple. It's the Ringer NFL Draft Show, and then after the draft, we rename it to the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Because, we want it to be simple and easy. So the same feed has the different name because we wanted it to be super easy for people to keep track of. So Ringer NFL Draft Show and or the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, wherever you get pods, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, whatever. But yeah, check us out.
Well, trust me, this show has been renamed like 10 times. So, and not within the same year, just every year. It's like, you know what? We need to change that name. So we actually might be the same show 2 years in a row, but it's way too early for me. Talk about a way too early prediction. We'll see. Talk to me in August what the name of this show is, which I will have no input on. Anyways, appreciate you, Danny. Make sure you check out everything the guys are doing over there at the Ringer. They are absolutely fantastic. That is going to do it for today's show. On Thursday, we finish it up. Charles McDonald joins me for our final draft deep dive positional series, looking at the tight ends and offensive linemen in this year's class. And we are going to be live for that one as well. We're going to be live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at 4 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you bookmark, you subscribe on YouTube, you do all the things so that you can catch that show. Until then, we are out.